My name is Ethan Parker, and I built a multi-million-dollar tech startup using public library computers after my parents gave my entire college fund to my more promising brother. 8 years later, they showed up at my office begging for investment, money to save their failing business. Life has a fascinating way of coming full circle. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I remember the exact moment when I realized my family saw me as their second best investment. It was during my senior year of high school, seated at our kitchen table with college acceptance letters spread before me, MIT, Caltech, and Carnegie Mellon. My dream schools that had become tangible possibilities after years of perfect grades, robotics competitions, and coding projects that had earned me national recognition. The future I'd worked toward was right there in those envelopes, each one representing a different path to the same goal, becoming a pioneer in artificial intelligence. "We need to talk about your college situation," my father said, his voice carrying that distinctive tone that always preceded uncomfortable conversations. My mother sat beside him, fingers nervously adjusting her reading glasses, eyes focused on the tabletop rather than meeting mine. I nodded confidently. This was just a formality. My college fund had been growing since before I could walk, a fact my parents had reminded me of throughout my childhood whenever they encouraged academic excellence. "Work hard and your future is secured," they'd say. That fund represented more than money. It was the physical manifestation of their belief in me, or so I thought. "We've had to make some difficult decisions," my father continued, clearing his throat. "As you know, your brother Jack's engineering program at Princeton is incredibly expensive, and with his additional research opportunity in Germany next year, my brother Jack was 4 years older than me, studying mechanical engineering with a focus on renewable energy systems. An admirable field, certainly, but one that had always received disproportionate praise in our household compared to my work in computer science and AI. The unease in my stomach grew as my father spoke. "We've had to reallocate your college fund to cover Jack's final year and his research fellowship abroad." The words hung in the air between us. Reallocate. Such a clinical term for what they had done. "All of it?" My voice sounded distant, as though someone else were speaking. My mother finally looked at me. "Jack's education is at a critical juncture. His professors say he could make significant contributions to sustainable energy systems. The fellowship in Germany only accepts 12 students worldwide each year. You understand, don't you? You've always been the practical one. Practical." I soon learned that was code for the one we expect to sacrifice. "What about my college?" I asked, gesturing to the acceptance letters that suddenly seemed like cruel jokes. "You can start at Riverside Community College," my father explained, his tone suggesting this solution was perfectly reasonable. "With your grades, you'll qualify for some scholarships. You can work part-time and take out student loans for the rest. After 2 years, maybe you can transfer to one of these schools if you still want to." The meticulous plan I'd crafted for my future dissolved before my eyes. 4 years at a top computer science program, internships at leading tech companies, followed by either graduate school or a position at an innovative AI startup. That pathway, the one I'd worked toward since I was 13 and built my first neural network, was being casually rerouted. "We know you're disappointed," my mother added when I remained silent. "But Jack is at a critical point in his education. He can't pause now. Your brother is going to revolutionize energy systems, Ethan. Think of the impact he'll have on climate change." The implication was clear. My brother's dream was worth sacrificing mine. His potential contributions to society outweighed whatever I might accomplish. I was the backup plan, the contingency, the lesser investment. I didn't cry or scream or plead. Instead, I gathered my acceptance letters, carefully returned them to their envelopes, and walked to my bedroom. For hours, I sat on my bed, calculating and recalculating the numbers. Even with maximum student loans, part-time work, and the few small scholarships I might secure, attending any of my chosen schools would be impossible without that fund. That night marked the first significant fork in my road, the moment when I realized that sometimes the people who are supposed to champion your dreams might be the ones who sacrifice them for someone else's. The following morning, I came downstairs, with swollen eyes but resolved determination. My parents were at the kitchen table speaking in hushed tones that immediately ceased when I appeared. "I've made a decision," I announced, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "I'm not going to college right now." Their reactions were immediate and predictable. Shock, concern, disappointment that their practical son would make such an impractical choice. "This is about the money, isn't it?" my father asked. "Don't be dramatic, Ethan. Student loans are normal. Most of your friends will be taking them." "This isn't about being dramatic," I replied calmly. "It's about being strategic. If I can't attend the programs that will best position me for the career I want, I'm not going to waste money on a compromise." "So what's your plan?" My mother's voice carried that familiar tone of skepticism she reserved for ideas she deemed unrealistic. "I've been offered a position at Neuraltech," I said, referencing the small AI startup where I'd interned the previous summer. "It's entry-level data annotation, but they have tuition reimbursement after a year. I'll work, save money, take some online courses, and apply again when I can afford the schools I want." What I didn't tell them was the other half of my plan, the part that had formed in the darkness of my bedroom the night before. I would build something of my own. The AI application I'd been developing as a side project could be more than just a portfolio piece. It could be a business. My parents exchanged glances. This wasn't the tantrum they'd expected. This was calculated, and that concerned them more. "What about Jack's graduation ceremony next month?" my mother asked, changing tactics. "We've all planned to attend. You've already bought your suit." "I'll be there," I promised. "This isn't about punishing Jack. He didn't take my money. You gave it to him." The distinction was important to me. In the years that followed, maintaining a relationship with my brother while establishing appropriate boundaries with my parents would prove one of my greatest challenges. 2 weeks later, I started at Neuraltech. The work was mind-numbing, labeling thousands of images to train machine learning algorithms, essentially doing the grunt work that AI systems couldn't yet handle on their own. But it paid $16 an hour and offered health insurance. I rented a tiny studio apartment with a former high school classmate who was attending community college and established a rigid budget that allowed me to save 25% of every paycheck. By day, I labeled images and troubleshot basic tech problems. By night, I worked on my application, an AI assistant that could help small businesses automate customer service without the expense of enterprise-level solutions. I coded until my eyes burned, fueled by a combination of youthful stamina and the quiet rage of having to prove my worth. 6 months into this new life, I received a call from my mother. She sounded unusually hesitant. "We're having a family dinner on Sunday," she said. "Jack is home for the weekend before he leaves for Germany. It would be nice if you joined us." I had been keeping my distance, limiting contact to occasional text, messages, and brief phone calls. "I'll check my schedule," I replied noncommittally. "Ethan, it's been months," she sighed. "Your father and I were just trying to make the best decision for both our children. Jack asks about you constantly. Please don't punish everyone because you're upset with us." The framing was so perfect. I was the unreasonable one holding a grudge, not the son whose future had been compromised for his brother's benefit. "I'm not upset," I said, surprising myself with the realization that it was mostly true. "I'm busy building my life." I did attend that dinner, arriving with a bottle of wine I could barely afford. Jack hugged me tightly, genuinely happy to see me. He looked excited but nervous about his upcoming fellowship. the weight of our parents' expectations clearly visible in the tense set of his shoulders. My parents were cautiously welcoming, asking surface-level questions about my job and apartment. "How's the AI project coming along?" Jack asked as we cleared plates afterward. He was the only one I'd told about my side project during a rare, honest conversation right before I moved out. "Slowly," I admitted, "but I've secured my first beta tester, a local coffee shop willing to try it for their customer service inquiries." "That's impressive." His smile was genuine. "I wish I understood what you do. Mom and Dad have always understood my path better than yours." There was no malice in his observation, just an acknowledgement of a truth we both recognized. Our parents valued what they comprehended, and renewable energy made more sense to them than artificial intelligence. "It's fine," I said, though we both knew it wasn't. "How's Princeton?" I asked, changing the subject. "Intense," he admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it." I paused, surprised by his candor. "Is it?" He considered this longer than I expected. "Most days. Other days I think about the pressure, the expectations, the loans they've taken out for me now that your fund is gone. It's suffocating sometimes." For a moment, I glimpsed the weight my brother carried, the golden child status that came with its own burdens. It didn't excuse my parents' decision, but it contextualized Jack's unwitting role in it. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. As I drove home that night, I felt something shift within me. The anger that had fueled my initial determination was evolving into something more sustainable. Ambition untethered from the need for validation. I wasn't building my future to prove my parents wrong. I was building it because it was mine to build. Next morning, I woke before dawn and returned to my code with renewed focus. My AI assistant was taking shape, becoming more sophisticated than my original concept. I'd identified a gap in the market that larger companies overlooked. Small businesses needed customer service automation that didn't require a dedicated IT department to implement and maintain. 3 months later, I secured my second client through a connection at Neuraltech. A month after that, I had 5 businesses using my platform, providing valuable feedback that helped me refine its functionality. I was still labeling images during the day, but my nights and weekends were devoted to what increasingly felt like my real work. On the 1-year anniversary of starting at Neuraltech, I was called into my manager's office. Melissa was a fair boss, who had given me consistent positive feedback. "Ethan, you're eligible for the tuition reimbursement program now," she said, sliding a form across her desk. "Any thoughts about going back to school?" I hesitated. A year ago, I would have jumped at this opportunity. Now, I wasn't certain. "Actually, I've been thinking about something else," I admitted. "I've developed an AI customer service platform for small businesses. It's still in beta, but I've got paying clients and positive feedback." Melissa leaned forward, genuinely interested. "Show me." I pulled out my laptop and demonstrated the platform's capabilities. Melissa asked insightful questions and pointed out potential improvements. By the end of our impromptu meeting, she wasn't just impressed, she was intrigued. "We have some clients who could use something like this," she said thoughtfully. "Would you be open to Neuraltech becoming a partner? We could offer it as an add-on service to our existing customers." This wasn't a direction I had anticipated, but the opportunity was too significant to dismiss. "I'd need to maintain ownership of the intellectual property," I said, surprising myself with my assertiveness. "But I'm open to a partnership arrangement," Melissa nodded. "Let me talk to the executive team. This could be good for both of us." 2 weeks later, I signed my first partnership agreement. Neuraltech would market my platform, now officially named Response AI, to their small business clients, providing a steady stream of new users. In return, they received 30% of the subscription fees, and I retained full ownership of the software. Additionally, they offered to reduce my hours on data annotation so I could focus on development while maintaining my full benefits. That evening, I called my brother, who was 6 months into his fellowship in Germany. Despite the distance and our parents' actions, we had maintained our relationship through regular video calls and messages. "Jack, it's happening," I said when he answered. "The partnership with Neuraltech is official. I might actually make this work." "I never doubted you would," he replied. His voice warmed despite the poor connection and the early hour in Germany. "You've always been the brilliant one, Ethan." "How are things there?" I asked, hearing the strain beneath his encouragement. He sighed. "Challenging. The fellowship isn't what I expected. I'm working on a project that doesn't align with my interests, but it's what my advisor wants. Dad called yesterday asking how I'm doing. I made the mistake of being honest about finding it difficult, and he immediately launched into how much they've invested in my success and how I can't waste this opportunity. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The son they had invested everything in was struggling, while the one they had financially abandoned was beginning to thrive. "You know," Jack added hesitantly, "they ask about you. They're proud of you, even if they don't understand what you're doing." I wasn't ready to let that sentiment touch me. They're proud now that it looks like I might succeed despite their lack of support. That's different from believing in someone from the beginning. The silence that followed acknowledged the truth of my words. "Anyway," I continued, changing the subject, "tell me about the German girl you mentioned last time." As Jack launched into a story about his awkward attempts at flirting in broken German, I felt gratitude for our preserved relationship. We had managed to separate our bond from the comparative framework our parents had established between us. In the coming years, that distinction would prove invaluable to us both. The months following my partnership agreement with Neuraltech transformed my daily reality. I transitioned from spending 8 hours a day labeling data to dedicating most of my time to developing Response AI. My small studio apartment became headquarters for what increasingly felt like a real company, rather than just a side project born of necessity and spite. I established a disciplined routine that maximized productivity. Up at 5:30 a.m. every day, I'd work on coding until my reduced shift at Neuraltech began at noon. After finishing at 5 p.m., I'd return home for a quick meal, usually something simple I could prepare in minutes, before diving back into development. Until midnight. Weekends were entirely devoted to Response AI, with brief breaks only for essential errands and the occasional video call with Jack. The partnership with Neuraltech provided something beyond the steady stream of clients. It gave legitimacy. Small business owners who might have hesitated to trust a 19-year-old's independent application were willing to try it when presented as a Neuraltech service. This credibility accelerated adoption far faster than I could have achieved on my own. 3. Months into our arrangement, Response AI had grown from 5 clients to 50. Each new user provided valuable feedback that shaped the platform's evolution. I was meticulous about tracking every customer interaction, identifying pain points, and implementing improvements. This constant refinement process created a virtuous cycle. Better features led to happier clients, which led to more referrals and testimonials. At the 6-month mark, Melissa called me into her office again. "Ethan, we need to talk about scaling," she said, gesturing for me to take a seat. "Response AI is becoming one of our most requested services. The current arrangement isn't sustainable if we want to keep up with demand." My heart sank momentarily, fearing they might push for acquisition rather than partnership. I had become fiercely protective of my creation's independence. "What did you have in mind?" I asked cautiously. "We'd like to formalize your position here," she explained. "Shift you entirely away from data annotation and create a new role, Head of AI Solutions. You'd focus exclusively on Response AI development and implementation, with resources to build a small team. The offer was generous: a significant salary increase, full benefits, and the authority to hire assistants. It would provide stability, while allowing me to continue growing what I'd built. Yet something in me hesitated. Would this change our intellectual property arrangement? I asked the question that mattered most to me. Melissa shook her head. You'd maintain ownership of Response AI. We'd be expanding our partnership, not altering its fundamental terms. Neural Tech recognizes the value of your innovation, Ethan. We want to support its growth while keeping you motivated to continue improving it. I accepted the offer after negotiating a few additional terms to protect my autonomy. Within weeks, I hired my first 2 employees: Devin Williams, a brilliant developer I'd met in an online programming forum who specialized in natural language processing, and Zoe Chen, a recent business school graduate who understood the small business market better than I did. Together, we transformed my apartment into a makeshift office, laptops crowding my small dining table, whiteboards leaning against walls, and takeout containers often littering the counter. It wasn't glamorous, but the energy was undeniable. We were building something that solved real problems for real businesses. This UI needs a complete overhaul, Zoe announced one evening, about a month after joining. She was reviewing client feedback surveys with a critical eye. Small business owners don't have time to learn complicated interfaces. Everything needs to be intuitive on first use. Devin nodded in agreement. She's right. We're thinking like engineers, not users. Half these features are hidden behind menus that make sense to us, but not to someone running a flower shop or a cafe. Their perspectives were invaluable, pushing me beyond my technical comfort zone to consider the human element of the product. This was the kind of insight I couldn't have gained working in isolation. With my new salary, I moved from my tiny studio to a modest 1-bedroom apartment that offered slightly more space for our growing operation. It wasn't a fancy office, but having a dedicated living room for work and meetings made a substantial difference. I replaced my failing laptop with a high-performance development machine and even started contributing to a retirement account, small milestones that felt significant after my initial financial setback. What I didn't do was contact my parents about these developments. They learned about my progress through Jack, who served as our reluctant intermediary. Occasionally, they would text generic messages, "Hope you're doing well," or "Thinking of you on your birthday." I would respond with equally bland acknowledgments, maintaining a connection that was little more than a technicality. 9 months after becoming head of AI solutions at Neural Tech, an unexpected opportunity emerged. One of our clients, Meridian Coffee, a small but growing chain with 6 locations, had been using Response AI for customer support across all their shops. The owner, Vanessa Hawkins, requested a meeting to discuss expanding the system's capabilities. "Your AI has transformed our customer service," she explained when we met at her flagship cafe. "But I'm wondering if it could do more. We have all this customer data, purchase patterns, peak hours, preferred products, but we're not using it effectively. Could Response AI help us make sense of this information?" Her question illuminated a new direction I hadn't fully considered. Response AI had been designed primarily for customer interaction, but its framework could potentially be adapted for data analysis and business intelligence. It would require significant development, I explained. But yes, theoretically, we could create a module that analyzes customer patterns and generates actionable insights. Vanessa leaned forward, clearly excited. "That would be game-changing for us. We're opening 3 new locations next year, understanding exactly what products perform best at different times, and locations would streamline our inventory management and staffing decisions." I promised to explore the possibility, and over the next few weeks, Devin, Zoe, and I worked tirelessly to design what would become Response AI's analytics module. This expansion represented more than just a new feature. It was a pivot toward becoming a comprehensive business intelligence tool rather than simply a customer service solution. The development process was challenging, requiring us to build new systems for data processing and visualization that went well beyond the platform's original scope. Many nights I found myself coding until 3 a.m., only to wake again at 6 a.m. to continue. The intensity reminded me of the months after learning my college fund had been reallocated. That same driving need to create something meaningful from disappointment. 3 months of intensive development later, we launched the analytics module, with Meridian Coffee as our beta tester. The results exceeded even our optimistic projections. Within weeks, Vanessa reported a 15% reduction in inventory waste and more effective staffing allocations based on the platform's predictive analysis of customer traffic patterns. We've increased our profit margin by nearly 3% across all locations, she told me during our review meeting. That might not sound like much, but in coffee retail it's significant, and we've only been using the system for a month. Word spread quickly among our existing clients, and soon we had a waiting list of businesses eager to implement the new functionality. This success created a new challenge. Our small team could no longer handle the demand. We needed to expand, again, and that would require capital beyond what my Neuraltech salary could support. I scheduled a meeting with Melissa to discuss our options. By this point, she had become something of a mentor, guiding me through the corporate aspects of business that my self-education hadn't covered. Response AI has outgrown our current arrangement, I explained, presenting growth metrics and client demand data. To scale properly, I need to hire more developers and a dedicated customer success team. That requires investment beyond what I can personally fund. Melissa nodded, unsurprised. I've been expecting this conversation. You've built something that deserves room to grow. She slid a folder across the table. What you might not be expecting is this. The folder contained a formal acquisition proposal. Neuraltech wanted to purchase Response AI outright for $2.7 million, with an additional employment contract for me at a substantial salary. This is significant, I managed, trying to maintain my composure as I stared at the figure. It's fair market value for what you've built, Melissa replied. Plus, you'd have resources, a team, benefits, stability. Stability. The word resonated with unexpected force. Wasn't that what I had been seeking since that day at my parents' kitchen table? The security that had been promised and then withdrawn? I need time to think about this, I said, closing the folder. Of course, take a week, Melissa replied. But Ethan, she added, her expression serious, this is a good offer. Don't reject it just because it feels like giving up your independence. Sometimes the smartest move is joining forces with people who value what you've created. That night, I called the one person whose perspective I trusted implicitly. Jack, I need your advice, I said when he answered. It was early morning in Germany, but he was already in his lab. Neuraltech wants to buy Response AI, completely. I explained the offer, including the financial details and career implications. That's incredible, he said when I finished. Are you going to accept? I don't know, I admitted. The money would set me up for years. I could even go back to school if I wanted to. But it wouldn't be yours anymore if you sell, he finished my thought. Exactly. Am I being irrational? This is the kind of security most people dream about. Jack was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Of course. I hate my fellowship, not the engineering part. I love that. But this specific program, the rigid hierarchy, the politics, every day feels like I'm trying to fulfill someone else's expectations rather than pursuing what actually excites me about renewable energy. His confession stunned me. But you're almost finished. You've invested so much time. That's what I keep telling myself, he sighed. But lately I've been wondering what if I had chosen differently. What if I had focused on community-based sustainable energy projects instead of theoretical research for massive corporations? Would I be happier? Making a more direct impact? I understood the parallel he was drawing. You think I should turn down the acquisition? I think you should ask yourself what success really means to you, he clarified. Is it financial security, professional recognition, or is it creating something meaningful on your terms? There's no wrong answer, but don't let other people's definitions determine yours. After we hung up, I sat with his words, recognizing their wisdom. My journey had never been about proving my parents wrong or achieving conventional success. It was about building something I believed in, something that reflected my values and vision. The next morning, I called Melissa. I'm grateful for the offer, I told her, but I'm going to decline. I want to grow Response AI independently. I figured you might say that, she replied, not sounding particularly disappointed. In that case, I have something else to propose. Neural Tech isn't the only one interested in what you're building. I know some investors who might be willing to provide capital without taking control. Those introductions proved transformative. Within a month, I met with Taylor Vance, managing partner at Horizon Ventures, a firm specializing in early-stage tech startups. Unlike other investors I'd researched, Horizon prioritized long-term growth over quick exits. What impressed us about Response AI isn't just the technology, Taylor explained during our first meeting. It's how you've identified a genuine market need and evolved the product based on real user feedback. Too many AI startups begin with a solution and then search for a problem. You've done the opposite. After several rounds of discussions and due diligence, Horizon offered $1.2 million in seed funding for a 20% equity stake. This valued Response AI at $6 million, more than double Neuraltech's acquisition offer, and would allow me to retain controlling interest while accessing the capital needed for expansion. The term sheet included board representation for Horizon, but guaranteed my position as CEO and majority shareholder. Most importantly, it provided resources to hire a proper team and secure dedicated office space. I accepted the offer after careful consideration and consultation with an attorney who specialized in startup financing. The terms struck the balance. I had been seeking resources for growth while preserving my autonomy and vision. The day I signed the investment agreement marked the beginning of a new chapter. I gave notice at Neuraltech, transitioning from employee to partner as we maintained our marketing arrangement while establishing Response AI as an independent entity. With funding secured, I leased modest office space in a renovated industrial building downtown, 600 square feet that felt palatial compared to my apartment. Devin and Zoe became our first official full-time employees, with competitive salaries and equity packages that reflected their early commitment to Response AI's vision. We expanded quickly, hiring 3 additional developers, a UX designer, and a client success manager within the first month. Each new team member brought fresh perspectives and skills that enhanced our product and operations. The energy in our small office was electric, the sense that we were building something with the potential to transform how small businesses operated. This period of growth wasn't without challenges. Managing a team requires different skills than building software. I had to learn to delegate, to trust others with aspects of a product I had previously controlled entirely. There were moments of friction as we established workflows and defined roles, growing pains that tested my leadership capabilities. You can't review every line of code anymore, Devin told me one evening when he found me still at the office at 11 p.m., scrutinizing a pull request for a feature that wasn't central to our current priorities. That's not scalable. You need to trust your team. He was right, of course. My instinct for control, perhaps intensified by how I'd lost control of my original life plan, had become a potential obstacle to Response AI's growth. Learning to release that control gradually became one of my most significant personal challenges as CEO. As our team expanded, so did our product's capabilities. The analytics module evolved into a comprehensive business intelligence system that could process data from multiple sources, generating insights that helped small businesses compete more effectively with larger companies that had dedicated data science teams. We rebranded slightly, from Response AI to Response IQ, reflecting our expanded focus on intelligence rather than just customer interactions. The name change symbolized our evolution from a single-purpose tool to a platform with multiple integrated solutions. 6 months after receiving Horizon's investment, Response IQ served over 300 clients across various industries, from retail and food service to professional services and healthcare. Our monthly recurring revenue had grown to $175,000, with a customer retention rate above 90% and a steadily increasing average contract value as clients adopted additional modules. During this period of intense focus on business growth, my minimal contact with my parents continued. They learned about my company's progress primarily through Jack, who had completed his fellowship and returned to the United States to work for a smaller, more innovative energy firm in Colorado, a choice that had disappointed our parents but aligned better with his values. Occasionally, they would reach out directly with text messages asking how I was doing or sharing news about distant relatives. I responded politely but briefly, maintaining the emotional distance that had become our status quo. As my 22nd birthday approached, marking 3 years since the conversation that had altered my life's course, I received an unexpected call from my father. "Ethan," he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Your mother and I would like to take you to dinner for your birthday. Somewhere nice, our treat." The invitation surprised me. "Is Jack coming too?" I asked. "He's presenting at a conference that weekend," my father explained. "But he thought it would be good for us to see you. He says you're doing well with your computer business." The understatement was almost comical. Response IQ was now valued at over $6 million, with a team of 11 employees and growing industry recognition. I had recently been profiled in a regional business publication as an emerging tech entrepreneur to watch. "I suppose we could do dinner," I conceded, curiosity overcoming my reservations. After 3 years of building something completely separate from my family's influence or support, I was secure enough in my identity to face them without the raw hurt that had once defined our relationship. Little did I know that this dinner would reveal motivations far more calculated than simple reconciliation. My parents weren't just reaching out to reconnect with their successful son. They had a specific request that would bring our story full circle in ways I never could have anticipated. The restaurant my parents selected for my birthday dinner, Emerson's, was the kind of upscale establishment they reserved for truly special occasions. White tablecloths, sommelier service, and entrees that cost more than I used to make in a day at Neuraltech. As a child, dining here had been a rare treat, usually to celebrate significant achievements: straight A's for an entire year, Jack's, scholarship to Princeton, acceptance to prestigious summer programs. I arrived precisely on time, dressed in a tailored navy suit that represented another small milestone in my journey. When I'd left home 3 years earlier, my wardrobe had consisted primarily of faded jeans and tech company t-shirts collected from hackathons. Now, I dressed the part of a CEO, even if imposter syndrome occasionally whispered that I was still just a kid playing dress-up. My parents were already seated, my mother rising immediately when she spotted me approaching. She embraced me with uncharacteristic emotion. "Ethan, you look so grown up," she said, studying my face as if memorizing new details. "The suit is very professional." My father stood to shake my hand, a strangely formal gesture that morphed awkwardly into a brief hug. "Good to see you, son. You look well." I took my seat across from them, acutely aware of the strange tension vibrating between us. They seemed nervous, almost deferential, a dramatic shift from the confident, directive parents who had once informed me that my educational future had been sacrificed for my brothers. "How have you been?" my mother asked, smoothing her napkin repeatedly. "Jack says you have your own company now." Response IQ, I confirmed. "We provide AI-powered business intelligence for small to mid-sized companies." My father nodded as if he understood completely, though his furrowed brow betrayed his confusion. And you have employees? An office? 11 full-time employees, plus some contractors. We're in the Catalyst building downtown. That's impressive, my father admitted, studying me with new interest. Without a degree. The reference to my lack of formal education, the direct result of their decision to reallocate my college fund, hung awkwardly between us. I maintained a neutral expression, refusing to either acknowledge the implied compliment or respond to the underlying history. Formal education isn't the only path to success, I replied evenly. My technical skills and market understanding have proved sufficient. The waiter's arrival provided a welcome interruption, and we ordered drinks and appetizers. As he departed, my mother reached across the table to touch my hand, a gesture so unexpected I nearly pulled away. "We've missed you at family gatherings," she said, her eyes seeking connection. "Your cousin Megan had a baby last month," she asked. "About you at the shower." "I saw her announcement online," I acknowledged. "I sent a gift." "That was thoughtful," she replied, clearly searching for connection points. "We're having Thanksgiving at our house again this year. It would mean a lot if you joined us." Before I could respond, my father interjected with what I sensed was the real purpose of this dinner. "Ethan, your mother and I have been discussing our business situation recently," he began, his tone shifting to what I recognized as his important financial matters voice. "As you may know, our hardware store has been facing increased competition from the national chains. My parents had owned Parkview Hardware for nearly 30 years. The small business had provided our solidly middle-class upbringing and funded the early portions of both Jack's and my college savings before my father's investments allegedly grew them further. The retail landscape has changed dramatically," he continued. "We've been exploring options to modernize our operations and better compete with the big box stores, which is partly why we wanted to talk with you." There it was, the actual purpose behind this reconciliation attempt. They wanted something from me. "I see," I said neutrally, taking a sip of water. "What kind of modernization are you considering?" "Well," he continued, seemingly encouraged by my engagement, "we've been looking at inventory management systems, customer databases, online ordering capabilities. But the options designed for small businesses like ours are either too simplistic or prohibitively expensive." My mother, always less comfortable with business discussions, added her perspective. "What your father is trying to say is that we're very proud of what you've accomplished with your company. We've been following your progress through Jack, and it sounds like you're doing exactly the kind of work that could help a business like ours." The irony was almost perfect. The parents who had redirected my college fund away from my education now wanted to leverage the expertise I had developed despite that obstacle. The circumstances had a symmetry that might have been satisfying if it weren't so transparently self-interested. "You want Response IQ to create a solution for Parkview Hardware?" I clarified, seeing no benefit in prolonging the oblique approach. My father looked relieved that I had cut to the chase. "Yes, exactly. We were hoping you might develop a system tailored to our specific needs. Obviously, we'd pay your company's regular rates." Regular rates for a fully customized small business implementation started at $50,000, with monthly subscription fees thereafter. An amount I suspected was well beyond what their struggling hardware store could afford. This wasn't just about business services. They were seeking special consideration. "Our implementation calendar is currently booked 3 months out," I replied, maintaining a professional tone. "But I can have our client acquisition team reach out to discuss whether our standard platform might address your needs." The disappointment on their faces was palpable. They had clearly expected more immediate assistance, perhaps at family discounted rates. "We were hoping for something more customized," my mother pressed, "given your familiarity with our business." I hadn't set foot in Parkview Hardware for over 3 years, but I refrained from pointing this out. Custom implementations require significant resources, I explained. We generally reserve them for clients with complex needs that our standard modules can't address. My father leaned forward slightly. Ethan, let's be direct. We're not just looking for a business service. We're hoping to discuss a potential investment opportunity as well. I raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised by this pivot. Investment? Yes. He continued with more confidence. Your mother and I have been considering our options for the hardware store. One possibility is selling the building and business to the developer who's been revitalizing downtown. The offer is substantial. And you're considering investing some of those proceeds in Response IQ? I clarified, trying to follow his thinking. My mother nodded eagerly. We've always believed in supporting family ventures. This would be a way for us to be part of your success while diversifying our retirement portfolio. The audacity was breathtaking. After redirecting my college fund to Jack's education, a decision that had fundamentally altered my life's trajectory, they now wanted to invest in the company I had built without their support. The college fund they had reallocated away from me was nothing compared to what they now hoped to gain from my success. Response IQ completed its seed funding round 6 months ago, I replied carefully. We're not currently seeking additional investors. My father's expression fell slightly, but he recovered quickly. Perhaps when you open your Series A round, we're talking about a potential investment of $300,000 to $400,000, depending on the final sale price of the business. The figure was both revealing and ironic, significantly more than would have been required to fund my education at MIT or Caltech. The college fund that had been insufficient for my academic future had somehow multiplied when they perceived potential benefit to themselves. Investment decisions are made based on strategic alignment and timing, I explained in the same professional tone I used with potential business partners. When and if we seek additional capital, those decisions will be made according to the company's needs and objectives rather than personal considerations. My mother's face fell at my detached response. We were hoping to be part of your success, Ethan, to make up for past misunderstandings. The characterization of their decision as a misunderstanding rather than a deliberate choice with profound consequences revealed how differently we viewed our shared history. To them, redirecting my college fund had been a practical financial decision that had unexpectedly caused discord. To me, it had been a fundamental statement about my value and priority within the family. Response IQ isn't a vehicle for personal reconciliation, I replied, keeping my tone measured despite the emotions churning beneath the surface. It's a business with responsibilities to its employees, clients, and existing investors. Investment decisions are made accordingly. The remainder of the dinner passed in strained conversation about safer topics: local restaurant openings, distant relatives' activities, innocuous community events. My parents made no further direct mention of investment possibilities, though. My father occasionally steered the conversation toward my company's growth trajectory and future plans. As we prepared to leave, my mother made one final attempt at connection. Regardless of business considerations, we would love to see more of you, she said, genuine longing evident in her expression. We've missed you. I felt a momentary softening toward her, recognition that whatever their flaws and miscalculations, they were still my parents with their own complex emotions and perspectives. I'll think about Thanksgiving, I offered, not committing but not refusing outright. In the parking lot, my father handed me his business card with handwritten numbers on the back. My personal cell and email, he explained, in case you want to discuss our proposal further or just connect. I accepted the card, tucking it into my suit pocket with a nod of acknowledgement. As I watched them drive away, I experienced a swirl of conflicting emotions: vindication at the reversal of our positions, sadness for the relationship that had been damaged, and a quiet pride in having created something valuable enough that they now sought to be part of it. The following morning, I forwarded their investment proposal to Amara Wilson, Response IQ's newly hired CFO, with a simple query. Objective assessment requested. Personal considerations aside. Her response confirmed my instincts. Timing misaligned with our capital strategy. Terms would dilute existing seed investors disproportionately. Would not recommend accepting regardless of source. With professional validation supporting my initial reaction, I composed a polite but firm email declining their offer, citing Response IQ's current funding status and strategic focus. The message was professional, courteous, and devoid of emotional content, treating their proposal as a business matter rather than a family reconciliation attempt. My father called within an hour of receiving the email, his tone revealing disappointment poorly masked by forced understanding. "I respect your business decision," he said after minimal pleasantries, "but I hope you'll reconsider when circumstances change. We'd like to be part of what you're building." "I understand," I replied neutrally. Investment decisions involve many factors beyond capital availability. Strategic alignment is essential for sustainable partnerships. "This feels personal, Ethan," he pressed, abandoning the business pretense. "Like you're still holding the college fund situation against us." The direct reference to what had remained largely unspoken during our dinner offered an opening for honest dialogue. "It's not personal," I clarified. "It's business. But yes, there is a certain irony in you seeking investment opportunities in a company I built, despite rather than because of your financial decisions regarding my future." "We did what we thought was best at the time," he defended, "and clearly it worked out well for you. Look at what you've accomplished." "I accomplished it despite your choices, not because of them," I corrected. "And that's precisely why I won't accept your investment. Response IQ succeeded because I make sound business decisions, not emotional ones." The silence that followed acknowledged truths that had remained unspoken between us for years. When he finally responded, his tone carried resignation and perhaps a glimmer of new understanding. "I see," he said simply. "We'll respect your decision and find other investment options." After ending the call, I sat in my office, looking out at the cityscape visible through my window. The journey from that kitchen table conversation to this moment constituted a transformation I couldn't have imagined when it began. Not just professionally, but in how I understood myself, success, and the true meaning of security. With my parents' investment proposal firmly declined, I refocused on Response IQ's next phase of growth. We had reached an inflection point where existing clients were requesting increasingly sophisticated features, while our sales team was bringing in new businesses with diverse needs. Balancing these demands required both strategic clarity and technical innovation. "We need to make some architectural decisions," Devin explained during our weekly development meeting. "The codebase we built for the initial product won't scale efficiently with these new modules. We're patching instead of rebuilding, and it's creating technical debt." He was right. Response IQ had evolved organically from my original customer, Service AI, to a comprehensive business intelligence platform. What had begun as elegant, focused code had accumulated compromises and quick fixes as we rapidly added features to meet client demands. "What are you proposing?" I asked, recognizing the seriousness of his concern. 3 months of intensive refactoring, he replied. Rebuild the core architecture to support modular expansion. It means slowing new feature development temporarily, but the platform will be significantly more robust afterward. This recommendation presented our first major strategic dilemma. Pausing feature development would disappoint clients eagerly awaiting promised capabilities and potentially slow our growth. Yet, ignoring the technical foundation issues would create larger problems down the road. After extensive discussion with the entire leadership team, we made the difficult decision to postpone our roadmap for 1 quarter while we rebuilt Response IQ's foundation. I personally called our 20 largest clients to explain the delay, promising that the short-term pause would enable more rapid innovation afterward. This period of technical reconstruction coincided with physical expansion as well. Our team had outgrown our original office, with developers sharing desks and our client success team squeezed into what had once been a storage closet. We leased a full floor in the same building, 2,500 square feet that seemed cavernous compared to our starter space. The expanded office featured proper conference rooms, dedicated spaces for different departments, and a small kitchen area where team members could prepare meals and socialize. These improvements might seem minor, but they represented significant milestones in Response IQ's evolution from scrappy startup to established business. As we approached the completion of our technical rebuild, an unexpected opportunity emerged. One of our clients, Westridge Medical Group, had been using Response IQ to analyze patient data for operational efficiency. Dr. Sarah Lawson, their managing partner, reached out with a new proposal. "We've been thinking about Response IQ's potential clinical applications," she explained when we met. "The same AI that helps us optimize appointment scheduling and billing processes could potentially identify patterns in patient outcomes and treatment responses." The suggestion opened an entirely new market possibility: healthcare analytics beyond just administrative functions. It was an exciting prospect, but entered territory with significant regulatory complexities. That would require HIPAA compliance, and probably FDA clearance depending on how the system was used, I noted, mentally cataloging the regulatory hurdles. Dr. Lawson nodded. "Absolutely. It would be a substantial undertaking. But if you could develop a compliant platform for small to mid-sized medical practices, you'd be addressing a massive unmet need. The major healthcare analytics systems are designed for hospital networks with seven-figure budgets." The opportunity aligned perfectly with Response IQ's mission of bringing sophisticated analytics to smaller organizations, but entering the healthcare domain would require expertise we didn't currently possess. Rather than rushing into this new vertical, we established a healthcare advisory board, recruiting medical professionals and compliance experts to guide potential development. This methodical approach represented my evolving leadership philosophy: ambitious, but disciplined growth, pursuing opportunities that aligned with our core strengths while acknowledging our limitations. The college fund crisis that had launched my journey had taught me valuable lessons about self-reliance, but leading Response IQ was teaching me equally important lessons about knowing when to seek guidance and expertise beyond my own. As we approached Response IQ's second anniversary, our team had grown to 17 full-time employees serving over 400 clients across multiple industries. Monthly recurring revenue exceeded $300,000, and we were maintaining profitability despite our significant reinvestment in platform development and team expansion. This progress attracted attention beyond Horizon Ventures. Other investors began reaching out, inquiring about potential Series A funding opportunities. These conversations were preliminary, but signaled that Response IQ had established itself as a viable, growing business rather than merely a promising startup. One particularly interesting inquiry came from Vertex Capital, a firm specializing in AI and machine learning ventures. Their partner, Michael Donovan, requested an introductory meeting to discuss Response IQ's technology and growth strategy. "We've been tracking your company for several months," Michael explained when we met at their downtown offices. "Your approach to business intelligence for SMBs is distinctive in a market that tends to focus either on enterprise solutions or simplified small business tools with limited capabilities." The conversation explored Response IQ's technology, market positioning, and growth potential in considerable detail. Michael asked insightful questions that demonstrated genuine understanding of both our technical approach and business model. "We believe Response IQ has potential well beyond your current market," he concluded. "When you decide to open your Series A round, we'd be very interested in discussing lead investment." These conversations with potential investors forced me to clarify my vision for Response IQ's future. Did I want to maintain our current growth trajectory, focusing on profitability and controlled expansion? Or pursue more aggressive scaling with significant venture capital, potentially sacrificing some autonomy for accelerated growth? This decision point mirrored choices I'd faced before, most notably when Neuraltech had offered to acquire Response AI. But the context had evolved. Response EQ was no longer just my creation. It supported 17 employees and hundreds of clients who depended on our platform. The stakes were higher, the considerations more complex. To help process these questions, I organized a weekend strategy retreat with our leadership team. We rented a lakeside cabin 2 hours from the city, bringing together our department heads for focused discussion away from daily operational pressures. "Where do we want Response IQ to be in 3 years?" I asked as we gathered around a whiteboard in the cabin's main room. Not just in terms of revenue or client numbers, but in terms of impact and purpose. The ensuing discussion revealed both shared values and divergent perspectives among our leadership team. Some advocated for aggressive expansion into new markets, while others emphasized deepening our capabilities within our current focus areas. All, however, aligned around the core mission of democratizing advanced analytics for businesses that couldn't afford enterprise solutions. "That's our true differentiation," Zoe observed. "Not just the technology, but who we make it accessible to. The businesses that operate on thin margins, where a 3% efficiency improvement makes the difference between struggling and thriving." This clarity of purpose would guide our next critical decisions about funding, growth strategy, and product development. As we returned to the city after the retreat, I felt a renewed sense of direction and purpose. Response IQ wasn't just a business created in reaction to my parents' decision about my college fund. It had evolved into something with meaning and impact beyond my personal journey. That evolution would soon be tested by an unexpected crisis that threatened everything we had built. The crisis hit without warning on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning. I had just arrived at the office, coffee in hand, mentally organizing my priorities for the day, when Devin burst through the door, his usually calm demeanor replaced by barely contained panic. "We've been hacked," he announced without preamble. "Someone breached our development environment last night. They gained access to portions of our codebase and possibly some client data." The words landed like physical blows. In the AI and analytics space, data security wasn't just a technical concern. It was the bedrock of client trust. A significant breach could destroy everything we'd built. "How bad?" I asked, already moving toward our server room. "We're still assessing the extent," Devin replied, following closely. The intrusion was sophisticated, targeted specifically at our proprietary algorithms rather than client information. "But we need to operate under worst-case assumptions until proven otherwise." I immediately activated our incident response protocol, something we had developed but never expected to use. Our technical team dropped all other projects to focus exclusively on containing the breach, while our client success team prepared communications for potentially affected customers. "What do we know about the attack vector?" I asked as our security specialists worked to isolate affected systems. "Appears to be a targeted spear phishing campaign," our newly hired security lead explained. "Someone crafted extremely convincing emails impersonating me, sent to several team members with access to our development environment. At least one person clicked a link that installed a keylogger." The next 36 hours were a blur of nonstop activity, securing systems, analyzing logs to determine access patterns, and conducting forensic analysis of potentially compromised data. Our team worked in continuous shifts, subsisting on delivered meals and brief naps on office couches. By Thursday morning, we had a clearer picture of the situation. The breach had been targeted specifically at our machine learning algorithms, rather than client data, suggesting industrial espionage rather than typical cybercrime. While some test data had been exposed, our production environment containing actual client information remained secure. "We were lucky," Devin admitted during our status briefing. The separation between development and production environments worked exactly as designed. If they'd breached production, we'd be facing a much different situation. The immediate crisis contained, we now faced a critical decision. How transparent should we be about the incident? We had a legal obligation to report certain types of breaches, but this particular attack fell into a gray area since no production client data had been compromised. We could classify this as an attempted intrusion that was successfully contained, our legal counsel advised. Technically accurate and wouldn't trigger mandatory disclosure requirements. It was a tempting option. Publicly acknowledging the breach might damage client confidence and provide ammunition to competitors. But as I considered our options, I thought about the values that had guided Response IQ from the beginning, values that had emerged partially in reaction to my parents' choices. We disclose everything, I decided firmly. Not just what's legally required, but the full situation. We tell our clients exactly what happened, what was and wasn't compromised, and the steps we've taken to prevent similar incidents. My leadership team exchanged concerned glances. Ethan, that level of transparency carries significant risks, our COO cautioned. Some clients might panic and withdraw regardless of the actual impact. And if they discover later that we withheld information, we lose something far more valuable than a few accounts, I countered. We lose trust. Response IQ was built on the principle that data insights should be accessible to businesses that have historically been excluded from advanced analytics. That mission requires fundamental trust in how we handle information. With the decision made, we crafted detailed communications for every client, scheduled personal calls with our largest accounts, and prepared a public statement acknowledging the breach and our response. As expected, the disclosure generated significant concern. Several clients immediately requested additional security information, while a few placed their accounts on hold pending further investigation. What I hadn't anticipated was the respect our transparency would ultimately generate. One of our largest clients, a regional retail chain with over 50 locations, reached out directly after receiving our disclosure. We've dealt with vendors who've experienced security incidents before, their CIO told me during our call. Most either hide behind vague statements or bury the details in technical jargon. Your straightforward approach is refreshing and actually increases our confidence in Response IQ as a partner. Similar sentiments emerged from other clients as the days progressed. Rather than triggering an exodus, our honest handling of the situation strengthened relationships with many of our most significant accounts. The few clients who did depart were outnumbered by those who expressed renewed commitment to our platform. The security breach, while initially appearing catastrophic, ultimately became a defining moment for Response IQ's corporate culture and reputation. It forced us to significantly enhance our security infrastructure, implementing advanced threat detection systems and more robust authentication protocols. These improvements, while born of necessity, positioned us favorably for approaching enterprise clients with stricter security requirements. 2 weeks after the incident, with our enhanced security measures in place and client communications stabilized, I received an unexpected email from Michael Donovan at Vertex Capital. Impressive crisis management. Your handling of the security incident reinforced our interest in Response IQ. When you're ready to discuss Series A funding, we'd like to be first in line. The message confirmed what I had instinctively believed, that integrity in crisis often reveals more about a company's value than performance during easy periods. It also accelerated conversations about our next funding round, as the security enhancements had consumed significant capital and highlighted the need for additional investment to support continued growth. After consulting with our board and leadership team, we decided to formally open our Series A round, seeking $10 million to fund expansion into new markets, particularly the healthcare vertical we had been exploring. Vertex Capital quickly submitted a term sheet offering to lead the round with $5 million, at a pre-money valuation of $30 million, 5 times our valuation from the seed round just 18 months earlier. The terms were favorable, preserving my position as CEO and maintaining our strategic independence while providing the capital needed for accelerated growth. After due diligence and negotiation of specific details, We accepted Vertex's offer and opened the round for additional participants to complete the $10 million target. News of Vertex's investment generated significant interest from other venture firms eager to participate in a round led by such a respected AI-focused investor. Within 3 weeks, the round was oversubscribed, with offers totaling over $15 million. This position of strength allowed us to select investment partners based on strategic value rather than simply accepting available capital. We ultimately closed the round at $12 million, including participation from our original investor, Horizon Ventures, along with 2 additional firms that brought specific expertise in healthcare technology and international markets, areas crucial to our expansion plans. This successful funding round garnered attention beyond investment circles. Tech Forward, a prestigious industry publication, requested an interview for their Founders to Watch series, focusing on entrepreneurs building significant companies outside traditional paths. The reporter, Lydia Chen, met me at our offices on a Friday afternoon. I had expected standard questions about Response IQ's technology and business model, but her first question caught me off guard. "You founded Response IQ without a college degree at age 19, she began. "What made you choose such an unconventional path?" The question touched directly on the pivotal moment that had launched my journey. The dinner where my parents had informed me that my college fund had been reallocated to my brother's education. I had never publicly discussed this aspect of Response IQ's origin, maintaining a professional narrative focused on the technology and market opportunity rather than personal motivation. After a moment's consideration, I decided to share a version of the truth, one that acknowledged the circumstances without casting my family in an explicitly negative light. I had planned to attend MIT or Caltech, I explained, but family financial circumstances changed unexpectedly, making that path impossible without significant debt. Rather than compromise on the education I wanted, I decided to gain practical experience while building something that solved real problems for businesses. Many people would have taken student loans or attended a less expensive school, Lydia observed. What made you choose entrepreneurship instead? I've always believed that education is about acquiring knowledge and skills, not necessarily credentials, I replied. The traditional path works well for many people, but I saw an opportunity to learn through building. Every challenge in creating Response IQ has been its own intensive education, just one measured in product releases rather than semesters. The interview continued, exploring Response IQ's technology, our approach to democratizing business intelligence, and our plans following the Series A funding. Throughout the conversation, Lydia returned to the theme of unconventional paths and how my lack of formal credentials had shaped Response IQ's development. Do you think not having a degree has been an advantage or disadvantage? She asked toward the end of our discussion. Both, I acknowledged honestly. There are certainly doors that remain closed without credentials, and concepts I've had to learn through trial and error that might have been covered in structured coursework. But being outside traditional systems forced me to focus entirely on creating actual value rather than signaling potential value through credentials. Response IQ had to work to solve real problems effectively because I didn't have prestigious degrees to fall back on. 2 weeks later, Tech Forward published the interview as their cover story, under the headline, "The College Dropout Who's Revolutionizing Small Business Analytics." The piece painted a compelling narrative of Response IQ's mission to bring sophisticated AI capabilities to businesses traditionally excluded from advanced analytics due to cost and complexity barriers. The article's publication coincided with our announcement of Response IQ's healthcare module, which had finally received regulatory clearance after months of development and compliance work. This timing created a perfect storm of publicity that significantly accelerated our growth trajectory, doubling inbound leads and shortening our sales cycle, as the Tech Forward profile established immediate credibility with potential clients. This sudden spotlight brought an unexpected phone call from Jack. "Famous little brother," he greeted me when I answered. "Just finished reading about you in Tech Forward. Pretty impressive for the family screw-up who skipped college." His teasing tone carried the warmth of our strengthened relationship, which had evolved into a supportive adult bond despite the complexities of our childhood positioning. "How are Mom and Dad taking it?" I asked, genuinely curious about their reaction to seeing their younger son profiled as a rising tech entrepreneur. Jack laughed. "Dad's telling everyone at his Rotary Club that he always knew you had entrepreneurial spirit. Mom's simultaneously proud and worried that you're working too hard without a balanced life. Neither has mentioned the irony of your success coming after they reallocated your college fund. And you? How's the community solar project going?" I asked, shifting focus to his work developing renewable energy systems for underserved neighborhoods, the path he had chosen after leaving the prestigious research fellowship that had consumed my educational funding. "Making progress," he replied. "Just secured municipal approval for the Eastside installation. Smaller scale than my fellowship research would have been, but directly helping people rather than writing theoretical papers that gather dust. Speaking of which," he hesitated briefly before continuing, "I've been thinking about going back to school. Not for engineering, I've got that covered, but for public policy. If we're going to make community-based renewable energy viable long-term, we need better regulatory frameworks." "That sounds perfect for you," I encouraged, genuinely supportive of his evolving path. "You've always understood both the technical and human elements better than most engineers." "The thing is," he continued, his tone growing more serious, "these programs aren't cheap, and most of my savings went into launching the community project. I've been looking at loans, but graduate policy programs have limited scholarship options compared to technical fields." I immediately understood where the conversation was heading, and a complex wave of emotions washed over me. Here was my brother, the one whose education had been prioritized over mine, now seeking my financial support for his continued education. The symmetry was almost too perfect. "How much are you looking at for the program?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "About $60,000 total for the 2-year program I'm considering at Georgetown," he replied. "I can cover living expenses with part-time, consulting, but the tuition is the sticking point." The amount was significant, but well within my means now. The Series A funding had included secondary shares that allowed me to take some money off the table, providing personal financial security I had never previously experienced. I now had over $2 million in liquid assets separate from my equity and response IQ. "Let me think about it," I said, not yet ready to commit despite my improved financial position. "Can you send me information about the program?" "Of course, Jackie," replied quickly. "But Ethan, I want to be clear. This is me asking for a loan, not expecting anything. I'm proud of what you've built, and I understand if this isn't something you want to consider given our history." After we hung up, I sat in my office contemplating the situation's profound irony. My education had been sacrificed for Jack's, leading me down a path that had ultimately created financial success beyond what a traditional route might have provided. Now I was in a position to fund his education, completing a circle of family. Financial entanglement I had deliberately avoided for years. The decision wasn't simply financial but deeply personal, touching on unresolved feelings about my parents' choice and what responsibilities we held toward one another as adult siblings. Jack hadn't taken my college fund. Our parents had given it to him. But he had benefited from their decision, one that had fundamentally altered both our trajectories in ways neither of us could have anticipated. As I considered his request, I realized that my response would reflect not just my financial capacity, but my own healing and growth since that pivotal moment at our parents' kitchen table. The young man who had walked away from that conversation with quiet determination and suppressed hurt had evolved into someone with different perspectives on success, obligation, and family relationships. The question now was whether I could separate My feelings about our parents' decision from my relationship with Jack, who had consistently supported my unconventional path, even while navigating his own complex relationship with our parents' expectations. His current work, creating renewable energy access for communities typically excluded from sustainable infrastructure, reflected values similar to Response IQ's mission of democratizing advanced technology. These considerations extended beyond personal family dynamics to touch on broader questions about responsibility, opportunity, and reciprocity. My journey had begun with the withdrawal of expected support, forcing self-reliance that had ultimately served me well. How would providing support to Jack shape his path? Would it create unhealthy dependency or enable meaningful contribution that might not otherwise be possible? As I weighed these questions, my phone buzzed with a notification. Jack had sent the program information as promised. The Georgetown McCourt School of Public Policy's focus on energy policy and sustainability governance aligned perfectly with his community-based approach to renewable energy. This wasn't a random academic pursuit, but a strategic extension of work already making tangible impact. The complexity of the situation crystallized a perspective that had been forming throughout my journey with Response IQ. Success creates not just opportunity but responsibility, not obligation to fulfill others' expectations, but the chance to make deliberate choices about how resources are allocated consistent with one's deeper values. This realization would guide not just my decision about Jack's education, but Response IQ's next phase of growth, as we navigated the expanded possibilities created by our successful Series A funding and increasing market recognition. The coming months would test both my personal principles and our company's core mission in ways that would define our trajectory for years to come. The Georgetown program information packet sat on my desk for 3 days while I processed the complex emotions surrounding Jack's request. On the 4th day, I made my decision. Rather than simply texting or calling, I arranged to meet Jack in person during his upcoming visit to the city for a renewable energy conference. We met at Riverside Park, on a crisp Saturday morning, walking along the tree-lined paths as families and joggers passed by. The neutral territory seemed appropriate for a conversation weighted with our complicated history. "I've been thinking about your request," I began after our initial catching up. "And I've decided to cover the full tuition for your program." Jack stopped walking, clearly surprised by the offer. "The full amount?" "Ethan, I was just asking for a loan to help bridge the gap. You don't need to." "I want to," I interrupted. "But I have 2 conditions." His expression shifted to curiosity. "What conditions?" "First, this isn't a loan. It's an investment in your education and the work you're doing with community-based renewable energy. I don't want repayment in dollars." "What do you want instead?" he asked cautiously. "I want you to pay it forward. Find ways to make renewable energy expertise accessible to people who are typically excluded from the field, the same way Response IQ makes advanced analytics accessible to businesses that can't afford enterprise solutions." Jack nodded slowly. "That's already aligned with my goals. What's the second condition?" I took a deep breath, addressing something that had remained largely unspoken between us. "I don't want Mom and Dad to know I'm funding this. This is between us, separate from our family financial history." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You don't want them to see this as some kind of redemptive full-circle moment." "Exactly. They made their choice about whose education to prioritize. I've made mine. But I don't want this turned into a heartwarming story they tell at Thanksgiving about how everything worked out perfectly in the end." Jack was quiet for a moment, processing my terms. "I understand, and I accept both conditions." He extended his hand formally, which I shook before he pulled me into a brief hug. "Thank you, Ethan. This means more than I can express." As we continued our walk, discussing the program details and his plans for applying the policy expertise to his community energy projects, I felt a sense of reclaimed agency. The decision to fund Jack's education wasn't about proving anything to our parents or healing old wounds. It was about deliberately choosing to support work I valued, carried out by someone whose integrity I trusted. This clarity about my personal values would soon prove crucial as Response IQ faced its most significant strategic decision since our founding. 2 weeks after my conversation with Jack, I received an unexpected email from Carla Bennett, CEO of Tensor Systems, one of the largest enterprise analytics companies in the country. The message was brief but consequential. In Boston next week, would appreciate the opportunity to discuss potential synergies between our companies. Dinner Thursday? Tensor Systems was the antithesis of Response IQ in many ways, a publicly traded corporation serving Fortune 500 clients with complex, expensive analytics solutions that required dedicated data science teams to implement and maintain. Their platform set industry standards, but were completely inaccessible to the small and mid-sized businesses that formed our client base. After consulting with our board members, who unanimously encouraged the meeting, I agreed to dinner with Carla. The implications were obvious to everyone. Tensor was almost certainly exploring acquisition rather than partnership. Companies their size didn't arrange casual dinners with startups unless considering absorption. I selected an upscale but not ostentatious restaurant for our meeting, arriving 15 minutes early to center myself before what would likely be a consequential conversation. Carla arrived precisely on time, her confident presence immediately commanding attention even in a room filled with business executives and wealthy diners. "Ethan Parker," she greeted, shaking my hand firmly. "Thank you for making time. I've been following Response IQ's development with considerable interest." After we were seated and had ordered drinks, Carla dispensed with small talk. "I appreciate efficiency in business conversations," she began. "So I'll be direct. Tensor is interested in acquiring Response IQ. We've been attempting to extend our enterprise solutions downmarket for several years with limited success. Your platform has solved precisely the challenges that have stymied our efforts in the SMB space. Though I had anticipated this approach, hearing it stated so plainly still sent a jolt of adrenaline through my system. Tensor Systems was offering validation on an entirely different scale than our previous milestones. "I'm honored by your interest," I replied carefully. "But I'm curious why acquisition rather than partnership. Our technologies serve different market segments with minimal current overlap." Carla nodded appreciatively at the question. "A fair point. We've considered partnership models, but Tensor's experience has shown that true integration of technologies requires organizational alignment. Different companies inevitably have different priorities, which creates friction in deep technical collaboration." Our conversation continued through dinner, exploring the potential structure of an acquisition. Carla was clearly prepared, outlining a preliminary offer that would value Response IQ at $75 million, a significant premium over our recent Series A valuation. The proposal included substantial roles for our leadership team within Tensor's organizational structure, with me joining their executive committee with specific responsibility for their SMB division. "We don't acquire companies to dismantle them," Carla emphasized. "We're interested in Response IQ precisely because of what you've built and how you've built it. Our goal would be to provide resources to accelerate your growth while integrating your technology with our enterprise platforms to create a comprehensive analytics solution across market segments." The offer was compelling from nearly every conventional perspective: financial security for our team and investors, expanded resources for our technology, and broader market impact through Tensor's established global presence. It represented a validating exit less than 3 years after Response IQ's founding. "I appreciate the thoughtfulness of your approach," I told Carla as our dinner concluded. "This obviously requires careful consideration with our board and leadership team. How soon do you need a response?" "We understand the significance of this decision," she replied. "Take 2 weeks to review with your team. I'll have our corporate development group send over detailed terms tomorrow for your evaluation." During the ride back to my apartment, my mind raced with contradictory thoughts. The acquisition offer represented the kind of exit most founders dream about: financial security, industry validation, and the opportunity to impact the market on a much larger scale. Yet something about it left me deeply unsettled, touching on uncertainties about Response IQ's mission and my own definition of success. The following morning, I convened an emergency meeting with our leadership team, sharing the broad outlines of Tensor's proposal, while our legal counsel and financial advisors began reviewing the detailed terms document that arrived via courier. The initial reactions were mixed, but predominantly positive. "This is an incredible validation of what we've built," our COO remarked. "Tensor Systems doesn't acquire companies casually. They see genuine value in our technology and approach." "The financial terms are exceptionally favorable," our CFO added, "particularly considering our relatively early stage. This represents a substantial return for everyone with equity, including all team members in our option pool." Devin, however, was more cautious. "Tensor builds closed systems," he noted. "Their entire business model depends on making clients dependent on their ecosystem. That's fundamentally different from our philosophy of accessibility and interoperability." His observation crystallized my own unease. Response IQ had been built on the principle that sophisticated analytics should be accessible to businesses traditionally excluded from such tools. We had deliberately designed our platform to work with existing systems rather than requiring complete ecosystem adoption, making implementation feasible for companies with limited technical resources and budgets. "Let's take a step back," I suggested. "Before we focus on the acquisition terms, we should clarify what success means for Response IQ. Are we building toward an exit or toward a long-term independent vision?" This question sparked a profound discussion that extended far beyond the scheduled meeting time. Our leadership team articulated diverse perspectives on Response IQ's purpose and potential future, revealing both alignment on core values and divergent views on how best to realize those values. Over the next week, we engaged in a deliberate evaluation process, examining Tensor's proposal from multiple angles: financial, strategic, cultural, and ethical. We consulted with key clients about how an acquisition might affect their experience, spoke with other founders who had sold to larger enterprises about their post-acquisition realities, and analyzed the potential market impact of combining our technologies. Throughout this process, I found myself returning to the fundamental question that had guided my decision about funding Jack's education. What values should drive this choice, separate from external expectations or conventional definitions of success? The parallel was striking. Just as my parents had once made decisions about my education based on their values and priorities, I now faced decisions about Response IQ's future that would affect not just me but our entire team, our clients, and the market we served. 10 days after my dinner with Carla, I requested a meeting with our board of directors to discuss the acquisition offer. The meeting convened in our main conference room, with Horizon and Vertex representatives attending in person and our other investors joining virtually. "Thank you all for making time for this discussion," I began. "After thorough evaluation and consultation with our leadership team, I've reached a decision regarding Tensor Systems' acquisition offer." The board members leaned forward slightly, anticipating my recommendation. "I believe we should decline the offer and maintain Response IQ's independence." The statement landed with palpable impact. While some had anticipated this position based on previous conversations, others were clearly surprised. "The financial terms are certainly favorable," I acknowledged, addressing the obvious question. "And there would be significant advantages to accessing Tensor's resources and market position. However, I believe acquisition at this stage would compromise fundamental aspects of Response IQ's mission and approach." I outlined my reasoning methodically, emphasizing 3 key points: our commitment to serving businesses traditionally excluded from advanced analytics, our philosophy of accessible design that minimized technical barriers to implementation, and our pricing structure that made sophisticated capabilities financially feasible for smaller organizations. Tensor's business model is built on comprehensive ecosystem adoption with significant implementation costs and ongoing consulting requirements, I explained. While their technology is exceptional, their approach inherently excludes precisely the market segment we were founded to serve. The board discussion that followed was rigorous and occasionally tense. Several investors legitimately questioned whether declining such a favorable acquisition was fiscally responsible to shareholders, while others expressed concern about competitive pressures if Tensor decided to build competing technology rather than acquire ours. I understand these concerns, I responded, and I recognize that my recommendation prioritizes mission alignment over immediate financial return. However, I believe Response IQ has the potential to create significantly greater long-term value as an independent company serving an under-addressed market than as a division within Tensor's enterprise ecosystem. After nearly 3 hours of deliberation, the board reached a consensus supporting my recommendation, though not without reservations from some members. The decision reflected not just my conviction, but the trust we had built through Response IQ's consistent execution and growth. The task of communicating our decision to Tensor fell to me. Rather than delivering the message by phone or email, I requested a video call with Carla, feeling that our decline deserved the respect of direct conversation. "I appreciate your directness," Carla said after I explained our decision. "While I'm obviously disappointed, I respect a founder who maintains clear conviction about their company's mission." She paused briefly before continuing. "I should mention that if Tensor can't acquire this capability, we'll likely build it. You've validated the market opportunity, and our resources are substantial." "I understand," I replied. "Competition ultimately benefits the market, pushing all participants toward better solutions. And there's room for different approaches serving different client needs." After concluding the call, I gathered our team to share the decision and its implications. Their reactions reflected the same range of emotions I had processed: pride in our independence, anxiety about potentially competing with an industry giant, and renewed commitment to our distinct approach. "This doesn't mean we won't consider strategic partnerships or even acquisition in the future," I clarified. "But any such move needs to align with our core mission of democratizing advanced analytics. We built Response IQ because sophisticated data capabilities should be accessible beyond enterprises with 7-figure analytics budgets." The decision to decline Tensor's acquisition offer marked a defining moment for Response IQ. By choosing independence over the security and resources of a larger organization, we had explicitly committed to our founding vision, accepting both the challenges and opportunities that came with that choice. This recommitment to our core mission prompted a reevaluation of our growth strategy. If we weren't building toward acquisition by a larger enterprise, how should we structure our expansion to maintain both our values and our competitive position? The leadership team retreated to a lakeside cabin for 3 days of intensive strategic planning, emerging with a refined vision for Response IQ's next phase. Rather than pursuing horizontal expansion into multiple industries, we would deepen our capabilities in our core markets while developing strategic partnerships with complementary platforms that shared our philosophy of accessibility. This strategy represented a deliberate alternative to both Tensor's ecosystem approach and the venture standard growth at all costs model. We would grow methodically, ensuring our technology remained genuinely accessible to smaller organizations, while progressively addressing more complex analytical needs within our target markets. As we implemented this refined strategy over the following months, I received occasional updates from Jack about his Georgetown application process. When his acceptance letter arrived, accompanied by a comprehensive scholarship package that would cover half his tuition, I felt genuine pride in his achievement and satisfaction in my decision to fund the remainder. The parallels between our personal and professional journeys continued to provide perspective. Just as I had chosen to support Jack's education based on alignment with my values rather than obligation or external expectations, Response IQ had declined acquisition to maintain alignment with our founding mission despite external pressure toward conventional success definitions. These decisions reflected a maturing understanding that true success comes not from meeting others' expectations or achieving arbitrary milestones, but from making choices consistent with one's deeper values and purpose. The obstacle that had launched my journey, my parents' decision to reallocate my college fund, had ultimately forced me to define success on my own terms rather than accepting predetermined paths or conventional wisdom. That perspective would soon prove invaluable as Response IQ faced unexpected challenges that tested not just our business model, but the fundamental premises of our mission. 6 months after declining Tensor's acquisition offer, Response IQ faced the market consequences of our decision. As Carla had warned, Tensor Systems launched their own SMB analytics platform, Tensor Edge, marketed specifically to mid-sized businesses seeking enterprise-level capabilities at more accessible price points. Their entry into our market segment represented both validation of the opportunity we had identified and a significant competitive threat. Tensor's vast resources allowed them to develop and deploy features rapidly, while their established brand and massive sales force gave them immediate credibility with potential clients. We need to assess the competitive landscape realistically, I told our leadership team during our quarterly strategy review. Tensor Edge has advantages we can't match in terms of development resources and market reach. Trying to compete feature for feature would be a losing battle. So what's our strategy? Our COO asked, expressing the concern felt throughout the room. We double down on what makes Response IQ fundamentally different, I replied. Tensor Edge is essentially a scaled-down version of their enterprise platform. It's still built on the assumption that clients will adapt their processes to Tensor's approach rather than the reverse. Devin nodded in agreement. Their implementation still requires significant technical expertise. They've lowered the price point, but not really the complexity barrier. Exactly, I confirmed. Our core advantage isn't just price, it's accessibility. Response IQ is designed to integrate with how small businesses actually operate, with minimal technical overhead and rapid time to value. That's not something Tensor can easily replicate because it contradicts their fundamental design philosophy. This clarity about our distinctive value proposition guided our response to Tensor's market entry. Rather than attempting to match their feature expansion or getting drawn into price competition, we focused on further reducing implementation friction and accelerating time to value for our clients. We developed streamlined onboarding processes that allowed new clients to see meaningful analytics insights within hours rather than weeks. We created industry-specific templates that provided immediate value without custom configuration, and we enhanced our integration capabilities to work seamlessly with the existing tools our target market already used daily. The key isn't just building powerful features, I explained during a company-wide meeting about our competitive strategy. It's making those features immediately useful to people without data science backgrounds. A powerful capability that requires weeks of configuration and specialized training is effectively inaccessible to most small businesses, regardless of the price point. This philosophy permeated every aspect of our product development. When our engineering team proposed a sophisticated predictive analytics module that would match Tensor's capabilities, we approved the feature, but with a critical stipulation. It had to be usable by someone with basic spreadsheet skills, not just data analysts. The resulting innovation, our Insight Assistant, embodied this approach perfectly. Rather than requiring users to build complex data models, it used natural language processing to let them ask business questions in plain English. Which products have the highest profit margin? Or, when are my busiest hours on Thursdays? Would generate actionable insights without requiring query language or statistical knowledge. This approach yielded results that surprised even our most optimistic projections. While we lost some prospects who were dazzled by TensorEdge's feature, list or brand recognition, our client retention actually increased, and word-of-mouth referrals accelerated. Small businesses appreciated a platform built specifically for their needs rather than a downscaled enterprise solution. By the third quarter following TensorEdge's launch, market data revealed a fascinating pattern. Tensor was indeed capturing significant market share in the upper mid-market segment, companies with 250-500 employees and dedicated IT departments. However, Response IQ was growing even faster among businesses with 10-200 employees, particularly in service industries and specialized retail where technical resources were limited. We're not competing for the same clients, our marketing director realized during our performance review. They're capturing organizations that might eventually grow into their enterprise platform, while we're serving businesses that would never have accessed advanced analytics without our approach. 4 months into this competitive phase, we received unexpected validation from an industry source. Analytic Insider, a respected market research firm, published a comparative analysis of SMB analytics platforms, evaluating both feature depth and implementation experience. Their conclusion was unambiguous. While TensorEdge offers impressive technical capabilities, Response IQ delivers superior business value for organizations without dedicated data science resources. Their fundamentally different design philosophy prioritizes rapid implementation and intuitive operation over feature breadth, resulting in higher adoption rates and more consistent utilization among actual business users. The report circulated widely throughout the industry, providing independent confirmation of our strategic positioning. More importantly, it articulated the distinction between technical capabilities and practical business value, a difference that perfectly aligned with Response IQ's founding mission. This external validation coincided with crossing a significant internal milestone, our 1,000th active client. We celebrated with a company-wide gathering that recognized the team's dedication and reaffirmed our commitment to making sophisticated analytics accessible to businesses traditionally excluded from such capabilities. 1,000 clients might not sound impressive compared to consumer platforms with millions of users, I told our team during the celebration. But remember that each of those 1,000 businesses represents people making better decisions, operating more efficiently, and competing more effectively because of the tools we've created. That's a real impact that extends beyond our client numbers to affect communities and livelihoods. During the celebration, I received a text message from Jack. Just finished my first semester at Georgetown. Policy frameworks make engineering look straightforward by comparison. Thanks again for making this possible. The synchronicity of these events, professional validation of our mission, and personal affirmation of values-aligned choices provided a moment of clarity amid the constant challenges of growing Response IQ. Both reflected the power of making decisions based on core principles rather than conventional expectations or external pressures. This perspective proved crucial as we navigated the next phase of Response IQ's development. With our competitive position secured and growth trajectory stabilized, we faced decisions about geographic expansion, additional funding rounds, and potential public offering pathways. Each option presented different advantages and compromises, requiring careful evaluation against our foundational mission. One particularly complex question emerged around international expansion. Our platform has gained attention beyond North America, with increasing inquiries from European and Asian markets. Traditional growth strategies would prioritize rapid global scaling to establish market position before competitors. However, our leadership team recognized that effective expansion would require more than just translating our interface. Different regions have fundamentally different regulatory frameworks around data management, our legal counsel explained during our expansion planning session. Privacy requirements in the EU are substantially different from US standards, while various Asian markets have their own distinct approaches. It's not just regulatory issues. our client success director added. Business processes and expectations vary significantly across markets. The small business ecosystem in Germany operates differently from Canada or Japan. Our value proposition is built on aligning with how businesses actually work, which means we need deep regional understanding, not just language localization. These insights led us to develop a deliberately measured approach to international expansion. Rather than attempting simultaneous entry into multiple markets, we prioritized the United Kingdom and Ireland as our first non-North American regions, allowing us to expand into English-speaking markets with similar business cultures while adapting to different regulatory frameworks. This methodical strategy characterized our overall approach to growth. Intentional development aligned with our mission rather than expansion for its own sake. We maintained this philosophy even as industry trends pushed toward increasingly aggressive growth metrics and rapid scaling regardless of profitability or sustainability. During this period of strategic consideration, I received an unexpected email from my father. The subject line read simply, "Need to discuss Parkview hardware situation." My initial reaction was wariness, recalling their previous attempt to leverage our family connection for preferential business services and investment opportunities. Yet something in the terse message suggested genuine urgency rather than calculated self-interest. After a brief hesitation, I called the number in his signature. "Dad, it's Ethan. I got your email about the hardware store. Thank you for calling." "Back?" he replied, his tone oddly subdued. "We've made the decision to sell Parkview. The downtown revitalization developer made an offer we can't reasonably decline, especially considering the competitive environment for independent hardware retailers." The news wasn't entirely surprising. Small hardware stores nationwide were struggling against big-box competitors and online retailers, but it still represented the end of a significant chapter in our family history. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely empathetic despite our complicated relationship. "The store has been part of our family identity for decades." 32 years, he confirmed, an unusual wistfulness in his voice. "I started there, right after college, working for old Mr. Harrington before eventually buying him out. Your mother and I raised both of you on what that store provided. It's not an easy decision, but the retail landscape has fundamentally changed." His vulnerability in this moment struck me. This was my father without the characteristic certainty that had defined most of our interactions. The man who had once confidently redirected my college fund was now navigating his own major life transition with visible uncertainty. "That's actually why I'm calling," he continued. "Before we finalize the sale, we'd like to extract the customer and inventory data from our current systems for archival purposes. The developer is installing completely new technology. Our records represent 30 years of community history, and we'd like to preserve them properly." The request was straightforward and reasonable, exactly the kind of data extraction and preservation project Response IQ could handle efficiently. It wouldn't require special accommodation or preferential treatment, just standard professional services. "We can definitely help with that," I offered. "I'll have our client success team reach out to schedule an initial assessment." "Thank you," he replied, the relief evident in his voice. "There's one other matter, if you have a moment." I braced myself, wondering if this apparent simplicity would now evolve into something more complicated. "Your mother and I have been doing some serious reflection since you declined our investment proposal," he continued, surprising me with his directness. "Jack has shared bits of your conversations, though I know he's been respectful of your confidentiality." Paused briefly before continuing. "We didn't handle your college situation well, Ethan. At the time, we convinced ourselves we were making a rational financial decision. But looking back, we fundamentally failed to consider the message it sent about how we valued your future compared to your brother's." The acknowledgement, coming nearly 5 years after that fateful kitchen table conversation, landed with unexpected impact. I had long since processed those feelings and built a life independent of my parents' validation, yet hearing this recognition still mattered in ways I hadn't anticipated. "I appreciate you saying that," I responded, carefully measuring my words. That decision changed my life trajectory, though not necessarily in the ways any of us might have predicted. "Clearly," he agreed, "you've built something remarkable, entirely on your own terms. While I wish we could take some credit for your success, we're simply proud of what you've accomplished despite our mistakes." "The hardware store data," I said, steering us back to practical matters. "Does it currently exist in a digital system, or are we talking about paper records?" "A combination," he explained, seemingly grateful for the shift to concrete details. "We've used 3 different point-of-sale systems over the years, plus we have customer account ledgers from before computerization. It's a mess of incompatible formats and physical documents." "That actually makes it an interesting project for us," I noted. Response IQ has developed tools specifically for extracting and harmonizing data from disparate legacy systems. It's a common challenge for long-established small businesses. The conversation continued, covering both technical details about the store's systems and more personal reflections on the business's significance to our family history. My father shared stories I'd never heard about the early years, the risks they'd taken to acquire the store, and the community relationships they'd built through it. This virtuous cycle of education, implementation, and value creation exemplified Response IQ's alternative growth strategy, expanding impact through deeper engagement rather than simply acquiring more customers. It validated our fundamental belief that sustainable growth comes from creating genuine value aligned with authentic purpose, not from maximizing short-term metrics at the expense of long-term mission. "The Academy isn't just teaching people how to use Response IQ," Devin observed during one of our strategy reviews. "It's teaching them to think differently about their businesses, to recognize patterns, question assumptions, and make evidence-based decisions. That mindset shift is ultimately more valuable than any specific feature we could build." His observation captured the essence of our approach to growth, focusing on depth of impact rather than breadth of reach. This philosophy guided not just the Academy, but all aspects of our business development, from product features to marketing messaging to client support structures. As we approached Response IQ's 5th anniversary, our unconventional approach had yielded remarkable results. The company served over 3,000 active clients across North America, maintained healthy profitability while continuing to innovate, and had built a team of 120 employees united by genuine commitment to our mission. Industry analysts recognized Response IQ as the definitive leader in accessible business intelligence, with our approach increasingly influencing even enterprise platforms. This milestone coincided with Jack's graduation from Georgetown's policy program. I attended the ceremony, watching with genuine pride as he received his degree. The policy expertise he had gained was already informing his community renewable energy work, helping him navigate regulatory frameworks that had previously limited implementation of small-scale sustainable power systems. "Your investment is already paying dividends," he told me over lunch after the ceremony. "We've secured permits for 3 community solar installations that were previously stuck in regulatory limbo." The policy knowledge from this program helped me identify pathways that neither the engineers nor the community advocates had recognized. His description of applying specialized knowledge to remove barriers for underserved communities paralleled Response IQ's mission in striking ways. While working in completely different domains, renewable energy and data analytics, we had both found purpose in democratizing access to advanced capabilities. The graduation weekend provided an opportunity for our first family gathering in years. My parents, Jack and I shared a dinner that, while not erasing our complicated history, demonstrated how adult relationships could evolve beyond childhood dynamics. We spoke as independent individuals with distinct paths, rather than as parents and children defined by family roles and expectations. My father shared updates about their transition plans following the hardware store sale, a smaller home, some travel, and community volunteer work. My mother described a part-time teaching position she had accepted at the community college, mentoring students pursuing business degrees. I'm finding that sharing the practical knowledge from running a small business for 30 years is more valuable to these students than textbook theories, she explained. Most of them are working adults looking to advance or start their own businesses, not traditional students looking for credentials. As she described her teaching approach, I recognized elements that paralleled Response IQ Academy's methodology, prioritizing practical application over theory, focusing on actionable knowledge rather than abstract concepts, and meeting learners where they were rather than expecting them to adapt to predetermined academic structures. It sounds like you're addressing similar accessibility issues in education that we focus on in analytics, I observed. Creating pathways for people who are excluded from traditional approaches. My mother looked surprised by the comparison. I hadn't thought of it that way, but yes. Many of my students are highly capable people who don't fit conventional academic models. They have practical intelligence and work ethic, but struggle with traditional classroom structures. Or couldn't access them due to life circumstances, my father added. Some of your mother's most dedicated students are people who couldn't afford college right after high school or had family responsibilities that prevented full-time study. The conversation shifted to how different forms of exclusion, financial, structural, and cultural, create barriers across various domains, from education to business tools to financial services. For the first time, we were discussing substantive ideas as intellectual equals rather than in the parent-child dynamic that had previously defined our interactions. My parents shared insights from their decades of small business experience, describing how banking systems, supply chains, and technology solutions had consistently favored larger enterprises over independent operators. I contributed perspectives from our work making advanced analytics accessible to traditionally underserved business segments. Jack discussed his efforts to navigate regulatory systems designed for utility-scale energy projects rather than community-based installations. Through this exchange, a tentative new foundation for our relationship began to form, one based on shared values and mutual respect rather than familial obligation or authority. Whether this represented genuine evolution in their thinking or simply adaptation to their own changing circumstances, it signaled potential for more authentic connection moving forward. During a quiet moment after dinner, my mother asked a question that surprised me with its insight. Do you think you would have founded Response IQ if we had funded your college education as planned? The question cuts to the heart of how unexpected obstacles often lead to unforeseen opportunities, how paths blocked in one direction can open entirely new possibilities. Honestly, probably not, I admitted after consideration. I would likely have followed a more conventional route, degree, corporate job, perhaps eventually entrepreneurship, but within established patterns. Being forced to create my own path from the beginning fundamentally shaped my perspective on what's possible outside traditional systems. My father nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes our greatest challenges become our greatest advantages, though that never justifies the unfairness of the original situation. His acknowledgement of that nuance, that positive outcomes don't retroactively justify unfair treatment, represented significant growth in his understanding of our shared history. The following week, I received an unexpected email from Carla Bennett at Tensor Systems. The subject line read, "Proposing a different kind of relationship." The message outlined a surprising proposal. Rather than competing directly in the SMB space, Tensor wanted to establish a strategic partnership where Response IQ would become their recommended solution for businesses below a certain size threshold, with seamless migration paths to Tensor's enterprise platforms for companies that eventually outgrew our scope. Enhance Response IQ's processing efficiency, while our user experience design methodology would inform their interface accessibility improvements. This arrangement acknowledges something fundamental about software design, Devin explained during an all-hands meeting about the partnership. No single architecture can optimally serve all use cases and user types. Different segments have genuinely different needs, not just scaled versions of the same requirements. The partnership announcement generated significant industry attention, with technology publications highlighting the unusual nature of the arrangement. Rather than the typical acquisition or competitive destruction narrative, this represented a mature recognition of complementary strengths and market segmentation. This partnership represents a maturing data analytics industry, noted one industry analyst. Moving beyond one-size-fits-all approaches to recognize that different business segments require fundamentally different solutions designed for their specific contexts and capabilities. Another commentator observed, "What makes this arrangement notable isn't just its cooperative nature, but how it contradicts conventional market consolidation patterns. Instead of larger players absorbing or eliminating smaller competitors, this acknowledges distinct market segments with different optimal solutions. The legitimization of our distinct approach through partnership with an industry leader created ripple effects throughout the analytics ecosystem. Other enterprise vendors began acknowledging the limitations of their platforms for smaller businesses, rather than simply offering scaled-down versions of their enterprise solutions. Several launched specialized SMB divisions with dedicated product designs rather than merely adjusted pricing models. This shift validated what we had recognized from Response IQ's inception, that genuine accessibility requires fundamental design differences, not just simplified interfaces or reduced feature sets. The barriers separating small businesses from advanced analytics capabilities weren't just financial, but structural, requiring approaches built specifically for their contexts and constraints. We're seeing a market evolution that parallels what happened in other technology segments, I noted during an industry conference panel following the partnership announcement. Enterprise software follows different design paradigms than consumer applications because they serve fundamentally different contexts. The SMB segment similarly requires its own distinct approach rather than compromised versions of either enterprise or consumer models. This partnership, formalized on Response IQ's 5th anniversary, provided a fitting symbol of how the company had evolved from a project born of necessity and determination into an established market leader with distinctive purposes and principles. We had not merely survived, but thrived by following a path defined by our own values, rather than conventional expectations. The journey from that kitchen table conversation about my reallocated college fund to leading a company valued at over $150 million had been neither linear nor predictable. Each obstacle had forced creative adaptation. Each setback had prompted deeper consideration of priorities and values, and each success had reinforced the power of authentic mission over external validation. This realization prompted me to consider Response IQ's cultural evolution as we grew. Many companies start with idealistic missions but gradually drift toward conventional practices as they scale. The cultural integrity we'd maintained while growing from a solo project to a 120-person company hadn't happened by accident. It required deliberate attention to hiring practices, team structure, and leadership development. We had purposefully sought team members who connected with our mission beyond technical qualifications or experience. During interviews, we asked candidates to share experiences where they'd created access or opportunity for others, moments when they'd built bridges rather than walls. These values-aligned hiring practices created a team united by shared purpose. Rather than simply shared employment, our organizational structure similarly reflected our commitment to accessibility. Unlike traditional hierarchies with layers of approval and restricted information flow, we developed a more transparent approach. Team members across departments participated in product planning and strategic discussions, bringing diverse perspectives to decision-making processes. This structure wasn't just philosophically aligned with our mission. It produced better outcomes by incorporating viewpoints from people with varied backgrounds and experiences. As I stood addressing our team at the anniversary celebration, surrounded by people who had chosen to join this alternative path, I found myself reflecting on the transformative power of unexpected detours. Response IQ exists because a path I thought was guaranteed suddenly wasn't, I told them. That moment, losing my college fund, initially felt like having a door slammed in my face. In retrospect, it was actually a push toward building my own doorway to something I never would have discovered otherwise. Looking across the room, I saw the tangible impact of this journey, not just in the company's success metrics or market position, but in the community we'd built together. Developers who found purpose in creating tools that empowered rather than confused users. Client success specialists who measured their achievements by the real-world problems solved for small business owners. Marketing team members who took pride in genuine education rather than manipulation. Everyone is connected by the shared belief that technology should expand opportunity rather than concentrate it. 5 years ago, I couldn't have imagined standing here with all of you, I continued. Not just because I couldn't predict Response IQ's growth, but because I was still defining success in conventional terms, prestigious degrees, recognizable credentials, established career paths. Losing my predetermined route forced me to question those definitions and create alternatives that have proven far more meaningful. This perspective extended beyond my personal journey, or even Response IQ's development, to encompass a broader philosophy about success, obstacle, and opportunity. Traditional paths often lead to traditional outcomes, while detours, whether chosen or forced upon us, create spaces for innovation and authentic contribution, precisely because they operate outside established systems and expectations. The most significant innovations rarely come from following established pathways, I continued. They emerge when people are forced or choose to create alternatives to existing systems. Response IQ didn't succeed by building a slightly better version of existing analytics platforms. We succeeded by questioning fundamental assumptions about who should have access to advanced capabilities and how those capabilities should be designed. This philosophy had implications extending far beyond our company's specific products or markets. It represented a broader perspective on inclusion, access, and the democratization of powerful tools. Themes increasingly relevant across industries and societies. The barriers we've addressed in data analytics exist in nearly every field, I noted. Healthcare, finance, education, clean energy, all have sophisticated capabilities that remain inaccessible to significant portions of society, not just because of cost, but because of complexity, technical requirements, and design assumptions. Every industry needs its own version of Response IQ, solutions that bridge these gaps without compromising capabilities. Our respective approaches serve different market segments more effectively than either could cover the full spectrum, Carla wrote. A partnership would allow each company to focus on its core strengths while providing clients with appropriate solutions throughout their growth journey. The proposal represented a remarkable shift from the acquisition attempt 18 months earlier, an acknowledgement that our different design philosophies served distinct purposes rather than simply representing different stages of development maturity. This validates everything we've believed about our position in the market, Devin observed as we reviewed the proposal with our leadership team. They're essentially admitting that their approach doesn't work for the clients we serve best, just as our platform isn't optimized for their enterprise clients. It's a recognition that different business segments have fundamentally different needs, our COO added, not just scaled-down versions of the same solutions. After careful evaluation with our leadership team and board, we accepted the partnership proposal with specific conditions that protected both our independence and our clients' interests. The resulting agreement created new growth opportunities without compromising our core mission or values. The partnership structure included several key provisions that preserved Response IQ's autonomy while establishing clear client transition processes. Tensor would refer businesses below 100 employees to Response IQ as their recommended solution, while we would provide seamless migration pathways for clients that outgrew our target scope. Technical integration between our platforms would allow data portability while maintaining separate infrastructures and development roadmaps. Perhaps most significantly, the agreement included knowledge exchange provisions where each company's expertise would inform the other's development without requiring convergence of approaches. Tensor's sophisticated algorithm optimization techniques could several team members nodded in recognition. Many had joined Response IQ precisely because they saw parallels to accessibility challenges in their previous industries or personal experiences. Our mission had drawn people who recognized similar patterns across diverse domains. What we've built here isn't just a successful company, I concluded. It's a working demonstration that alternative models are viable, that prioritizing accessibility doesn't mean compromising quality or sustainability, that creating genuine value aligned with authentic purpose builds more durable success than chasing conventional metrics or validation. In the years since that pivotal kitchen table moment, I had built more than a successful company. I had developed a fundamental understanding that true security comes not from external guarantees or conventional credentials, but from creating value aligned with authentic purpose. The obstacle that had initially seemed like rejection had ultimately become the foundation for something far more valuable than what it had replaced. That evening, after the anniversary celebrations concluded, I received a text message from Jack, sharing news about his latest community solar project, an installation that would provide sustainable energy to a neighborhood previously excluded from green power initiatives due to infrastructure, limitations, and economic barriers. The project had required innovative policy frameworks that Jack had developed using his Georgetown education, creating workarounds for regulatory barriers that had previously blocked community-based renewable energy in low-income areas. By designing a hybrid ownership model that combined municipal, nonprofit, and resident stakeholders, he'd created a structure that qualified for previously inaccessible funding while ensuring the community maintained decision-making authority. Jack had attached images showing the installation progress, solar panels being mounted on the community center roof with local residents participating in the work alongside professional installers. The project included a training program that provided participants with marketable skills in renewable energy installation and maintenance, addressing both environmental and economic needs simultaneously. His message concluded, "Couldn't have developed the policy framework that made this possible without Georgetown. Different paths, same mission, making advanced technology accessible to those typically left behind. Thanks for believing in my detour, brother." His words captured something profound about our parallel journeys. While working in completely different domains, renewable energy and data analytics, we had converged around a shared purpose: democratizing access to advanced capabilities traditionally restricted to elite institutions or wealthy communities. This alignment hadn't been deliberate or coordinated, yet we had independently gravitated toward similar missions. We had both recognized how sophisticated technologies often remained inaccessible to vast segments of society, not just through cost barriers, but through design assumptions, complexity requirements, and systemic biases in how innovations are developed and distributed. I sent a photo in response, a small family bakery that had used Response IQ's analytics to optimize their operations and increase profitability by 27% while reducing waste and resource consumption. Their success story had been featured in our Client Spotlight series, highlighting how data-driven decision-making had transformed their family business without requiring technical expertise or massive investment. "Different technologies, same impact," I wrote back. "Creating pathways rather than barriers. Proud of what you're building." The synchronicity in our work extended beyond surface similarities. Both projects required reimagining not just who could access advanced capabilities, but how those capabilities were designed and implemented. Jack's Community Solar Initiative challenged conventional utility models by creating decentralized ownership structures that kept benefits within the community, rather than extracting them to distant shareholders. Response IQ similarly challenged enterprise software paradigms by designing analytics tools that integrated with small business operations rather than requiring businesses to adapt to predetermined technical frameworks. The parallel between our journeys, his in renewable energy, mine in data analytics, highlighted how our individual paths, despite their differences, had converged around similar values. We had both found ways to democratize access to advanced capabilities, each in our distinct domains, but united by a shared commitment to inclusion rather than exclusion. This recognition brought my journey full circle. The college fund that had been reallocated from my future to Jack's had ultimately led both of us to create more meaningful impact than either might have achieved on conventional paths. What had begun as a painful division had evolved, through individual growth and deliberate choices, into complementary missions united by common purpose. The irony wasn't lost on me. My parents' decision to prioritize Jack's education over mine had ultimately benefited us both, though not in ways any of us could have predicted. Their conventional thinking about educational pathways and professional success had inadvertently pushed us toward more innovative approaches that better aligned with our authentic values and capabilities. While this outcome didn't justify or erase the unfairness of their original decision, it demonstrated how obstacles often generate unforeseen opportunities by forcing creative adaptation. Being denied the traditional path had compelled me to question conventional definitions of success and forge alternatives that proved more meaningful than what I might have found on the expected route. The security I had lost when my college fund was redirected had been replaced by something more valuable and enduring, the confidence that came from building something meaningful entirely through my own capabilities and choices. The path hadn't been what I had planned or expected, but it had led to a destination that was authentically mine, in ways a predetermined route might never have allowed. As Response IQ entered its next chapter, I carried this perspective into each new challenge and opportunity. The obstacles that had initially seemed like setbacks had become the foundation for something far more substantial than what they had replaced. Not just a successful company, but the unshakable confidence that comes from creating meaningful value on your own terms. This understanding guided our strategic planning for Response IQ's next growth phase. Rather than simply expanding market share or feature sets, we focused on deepening impact within our target segments. We established an innovation lab dedicated to identifying new barriers, preventing small businesses from leveraging their data effectively, then developing solutions specifically for those challenges. The Innovation Lab operated differently from traditional R&D departments. Instead of building features in isolation and then seeking market applications, our team embedded with small businesses across diverse industries, observing their actual operations and decision-making processes firsthand. This ethnographic approach revealed challenges that businesses themselves often couldn't articulate, but that significantly affected their ability to utilize data effectively. One key insight emerged from watching how business owners accessed information while actively managing operations, often through mobile devices in noisy environments with frequent interruptions. This observation led to the development of Response IQ Mobile, which reimagined analytics delivery for real-world operational contexts rather than assuming users would engage with data at desks with large screens and focused attention. Most analytics platforms are designed for data analysts sitting at desks, observed the UX designer who led the mobile initiative. But small business owners make decisions while managing inventory, serving customers, or supervising staff. They need insights, delivered in fundamentally different ways. The resulting mobile experience wasn't simply a reduced version of our desktop interface, but a complete rethinking of how analytics could integrate into operational workflows. It included voice-activated queries, visual insights designed for glanceability in active environments, and contextual alerts that delivered relevant information based on location and time patterns. This approach exemplified Response IQ's evolution from solving technical accessibility problems to addressing deeper contextual barriers that prevented full utilization of analytical capabilities. It reflected our growing understanding that true democratization required more than feature parity or price accessibility. It demanded fundamental rethinking of how capabilities integrated into users' actual work environments and decision processes. Our growing impact attracted interest from unexpected quarters. Educational institutions began approaching us about incorporating Response IQ Academy materials into business curricula, recognizing that our practical approach filled gaps in traditional data analytics education. Industry associations invited perspectives on how specialized sectors could better leverage data without requiring expensive specialized systems or dedicated analysts. Most surprisingly, several enterprise analytics companies beyond Tensor began exploring how our design philosophy might inform their own product development, particularly for segments outside their traditional customer base. What had begun as a necessity-driven approach to serving underserved businesses was increasingly recognized as a valuable innovation methodology with broader applications. This recognition validated what I had learned throughout Response IQ's development, that constraints often drive more meaningful innovation than abundance, and that designing for accessibility frequently produces solutions with broader value than initially anticipated. The limitations that had shaped our approach had ultimately become our greatest strengths, just as my personal detour from traditional education had led to unexpected capabilities and perspectives. As we developed plans for international expansion, data privacy enhancements, and industry-specific analytics modules, these principles remained our North Star. Each new challenge was approached not as an obstacle to overcome, but as an opportunity to reimagine how sophisticated capabilities could be made more accessible and impactful for businesses typically excluded from advanced technologies. The journey has taught me that true security comes not from external validation or predetermined paths, but from creating authentic value aligned with genuine purpose. What had begun as a desperate response to losing my college fund had evolved into a purposeful mission that extended far beyond personal circumstances or even a single company's success. In reflecting on this transformation 5 years after that pivotal kitchen table moment, I recognized that my parents' decision, however unfair it had seemed at the time, had ultimately forced me to forge a path that better aligned with my values and capabilities than the route I had originally planned. The setback that had initially appeared as rejection had become the foundation for something far more meaningful than what it had replaced. This perspective didn't retroactively justify their choice or erase the hurt it had caused, but it acknowledged how obstacles often generate unforeseen opportunities by disrupting comfortable patterns and forcing creative adaptation. The most valuable aspects of my journey had emerged precisely because the expected path was blocked, requiring me to imagine and create alternatives outside conventional systems. As Response IQ continued growing and evolving, this insight informed not just our business strategy, but our organizational culture and my personal leadership approach. Each new challenge was approached not as a barrier to overcome, but as an invitation to reimagine how things could work, to question assumptions about who deserved access to advanced capabilities and how those capabilities should be designed and delivered. The confidence that came from building something meaningful entirely through my own capabilities had replaced the security I had expected from traditional credentials and predetermined paths. This self-reliance wasn't isolation or rejection of support, but rather the freedom to define success on authentic terms rather than accepting external definitions or constraints. Looking toward Response IQ's future, I saw not just a growing company, but an evolving demonstration that alternative approaches could create sustainable value while expanding opportunity. What had begun as a personal journey of necessity had become a shared mission, extending beyond any single product or market to touch fundamental questions about how technology either reinforces or disrupts existing patterns of inclusion and exclusion. The path hadn't been what I had planned or expected, but it had led to a destination that was authentically mine, and increasingly ours, in ways a predetermined route might never have allowed. The obstacles that initially seemed like setbacks had become the foundation for something far more substantial than what they had replaced. Not just a successful company, but the unshakable confidence that comes from creating meaningful value on your own terms. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.